I'm not your doctor, and so you'll need to consult your doctor if you have a medical issue or something that about medicine.
It was funny. I think on our last webinar, I said, oops, this might go live here. Okay. I had said to Dr. Saunders, he was talking about how he was studying some natural things and looking into other ways to help people. And I said, wait a minute, you can't do that. You're a medical doctor. You're not allowed to do those things. And we laughed about that. But I do want to just mention this. Yes, Dr. Saunders is a great doctor. He is not your doctor. So we have to put a disclaimer out there that you need to talk with your provider as well. But there are a lot of medical doctors who are looking outside of their normal realm of study, which is wonderful. So I hope that you guys have found a good doctor like that, that you can see as well. I know a lot of people ask us, how can I see Dr. Saunders? And honestly, the best thing that you can do is join these webinars. You're going to get so much information from these webinars.
And
I'm
it's
telling you,
free.
it
You get what you pay
is.
for.
And you can rewatch it. So if you miss something, you can re-listen, which is just awesome. All
Can
right,
can I
today,
hijack
fun.
quick?
Yeah.
I'll just be a little crazy. So, this I saw this the other day. The Hippocratic Oath is first do no harm, right? As medical doctors, you all have to like raise your hand and swear to that. Like,
Yeah.
so ethically, like, how does that? How do doctors reconcile that when they're prescribing meds when they know that they could potentially be doing harm? Like, is that like a concern, or is that talked about in the medical community? That is a very interesting thing. No, it's not talked about. And so, what happens is when a drug company representative comes in, you know how, like on TV, if you see an advertisement for a drug, it says, "Oh, you should take this drug because it's so good and it does all these wonderful things for you." And then right at the end, they have a lawyer who can talk very fast say, "And if you take this drug, you could die and you could have all these nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, constipation." And they go through all this stuff. Do you know what? When they go to doctors' offices, they don't say that. All they say is how wonderful this drug is, and everything works, and it's all our studies show it's beautiful, and it never has any problems. And so, if you go to a doctor's office, you go to a cardiologist, for example, and the cardiologist she recommends a blood pressure medication, and you ask, what are the side effects of this blood pressure medication? She won't know. That's how they get around it. They say there are no side effects. That it works, and you don't even need to worry about that. Wow. So ignorance. Yeah. Wow. That's kind of scary. So
Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
they just don't talk about it. Sweep it under the rug. Next question. Yeah. Well, anyways, I appreciate that you are seeking to do no harm and get to the source and the root cause for people as a functional medicine doctor. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a fun topic, timely in many ways, but as you may hopefully are aware, Valentine's Day is coming in shortly. And so today's topic is 4 ways to love your heart. And it's probably not going to be to eat chocolate and get flowers. So we're going to dig into the other reasons that you should love your heart, why you need to love your heart, and um, I'm excited to talk through some of this. So many of you are here to one, either learn how to reverse maybe some damage that's been done, or just to keep your heart healthy. You don't want to deal with heart issues later. And so we're going to talk through some of these. So, 4 ways to love your heart. Number one, stress reduction. Talk to us about this, Dr. Saunders.
Wow. So, any of you who have, excuse me, the Healthy Heart Solution Kit, excuse me, you'll know that talks a lot about stress reduction, and you wonder why is that? It's because if we look at the research on what causes heart disease, the stress is by far the number one. There is nothing more important than that. So, for example, Dean Ornish set up some programs for reversing heart disease, and he proved that he could reverse heart disease. So he puts people on a diet and exercise and
supplement program, and then they have a stress reduction part. And when it all came down to it, at the end of his book, he says, well, you know, the diet's really not that important. The exercise really isn't that important. The supplements aren't really that important. Really, stress reduction is the most important part. So fast forward 20 years, and they did a study in India, large number of people, and they all had proven heart disease. And they put them on a diet, exercise, supplement, and a stress reduction program. And their stress reduction was 40 minutes of meditation every day. So this is in India, right? So at the end of the study, they had improved between 20 and 50%. In other words, their blood vessels were like clotting off, and they had gotten better. Their blood vessels got bigger, between 20 and 50%. And so they looked at what's called a regression analysis. What was the factor that had the most effect? Diet, it may have had no effect. It doesn't show any effect. Exercise didn't show any effect. Supplements didn't show any effect. Stress reduction, meditation 40 minutes a day could account for all of the benefit. So why do we stress stress reduction, right? Why do we do that? Because that seems to be the most important part of heart disease. If you want to reverse heart disease, reduce your stress. If you want to prevent heart disease, reduce your stress. And what you eat is less important. How much exercise you do is less important. I had a guy who had so much heart disease, he was told that he wasn't even going to last a month, that he was going to die within a month. He couldn't walk from here to 10 feet without getting crushing chest pain. And so he did a fast, and he fasted for how long? 30 days with water only. And in 30 days, he was out playing tennis. He was a tennis coach, and he got severe heart disease while being a tennis coach. Like every day he's exercising, he's doing a lot of exercise. But then we did a test on his heart disease, and the test, called the coronary calcium score, got worse after he had fasted for 30 days and his chest pain was gone. So his clinically he improved. He felt better. But if you actually looked at the blood vessels, they weren't any better at all. In fact, they were worse. So what does that mean? How do you actually reverse it? Well, what he needed to do is connect with people. And he had a hard time doing that because he had other issues. He had bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, and he was really having a difficult time. And so if you look at the top 10 causes of heart disease, or things that are associated with death from a heart attack, mental illness is like number 5 on that list. It's way above blood pressure. And all of the ones on that list are lifestyle things and stress things. So if you live in a certain area of town that's low income, so there's more financial stress, there's more social stress, there's more food stress, chemical stress, all of these things that go along with having a low income or poverty level. That is associated, all of those are associated with increased risk of heart disease. So the question is, how do you lower stress? Well, we already talked about one, meditation. That's a good way to lower stress, and that's something you can do proactively. Another way, from a different group at UCLA in Los Angeles, they looked at genes. Genetically, how do you improve stress or reduce stress? And they came up with connecting with people was really genetically the best way to reduce stress. So connecting with people means you have to feel connected. So think about it. Somebody with mental illness, especially serious mental illness, they're going to have trouble connecting with people. And that's an issue because that kind of stress is definitely related to heart disease. And then if you have, if you're feeling isolated, that is definitely a big risk factor for heart disease. So to love your heart, you have to love other people and help them. And when they did like this UCLA study, they looked at people who said, well, I'm just going to do what I feel like doing. I'm going to reduce all my stress by doing what I like to do. I'm going to eat what I like to eat. I'm going to do what I like to do. And I'm not going to take other people into account or anything. That's called the hedonistic method of stress reduction. And guess what? It did not work. It did not work at all. It didn't reduce stress at all. That people who were, off doing their own thing weren't reducing their stress. And people who were altruistic, who were like donating money to a cause, or they're going to make the world better by decreasing their carbon footprint, or any of those kinds of things that are just general altruistic kinds of things, that didn't help either. That did not reduce stress. The stress reduction happened in an altruistic manner when you helped somebody one-on-one.
Wow.
So helping people one-on-one reduce stress, whereas being altruistic in general did not.
That's good stuff. Not always easy, but that's good stuff. Number 2, let's talk through this one. Another way, number 2 on our list of 4 ways to love your heart is healthy diet. Okay, Dr. Saunders, there's so much information out there about what a healthy diet is. It is almost exhausting. Sometimes I get to talk to some of you and you're like, I can read 4 different studies that will tell me eat keto, don't eat keto, and they'll have the same effect. Like there's so many different things to do. How do we know where to start? What's healthy anymore?
Okay, it's not that hard. It's actually really easy. If you look at things that are processed, and processed means they are broken down, changed, things taken out, things put in, ingredients. So if you have like something in a box or a bag with a list of ingredients, you can bet that that's not healthy. And if you were to bet that that's not healthy, you would win most of the time, and you would get a lot of money if you were actually a betting person. So the best way to handle this is really simple. It's avoid things that are processed. Just eat real food. If you have, if you go and you see some beef, fresh, beef at the store, there's no list of ingredients. There's one ingredient. It says chuck steak. There you go. That's all it is. Just tells you what kind it is, but you can look at it and tell what it is. So anything that you can look at and know all the ingredients in it, that's what you eat. And that's how you love your heart, because your heart will get energy. So one of the things that people do is they get resistant to insulin because they eat sugar, they eat processed foods, and the processed foods always contain sugar. And a lot of it's hidden in various ways, or it has artificial sweeteners in it, which is just as bad. So what happens is eating this way over a long period of time, you get insulin resistance. Insulin resistance means your cells block insulin so that you can't get glucose into the cells anymore. So what happens? You run out of energy. And guess what? Your heart runs out of energy. So part of loving your heart is not having insulin resistance. It's avoiding sugar. It's avoiding artificial sweeteners. It's avoiding drinks that contain sweet in them, even juice. So if you eat a whole fruit, you're getting a lot of fiber with it that slows the absorption, so you don't have a high glycemic index. Whereas if you're drinking juice, you're getting all that sugar like all at once. And so it's a rapid rise. You get a high glycemic index, makes you more insulin resistant. So eat the fruit, don't drink the juice. And avoid any sweet drinks, gum, candy, sugar, anything that has sugar in it. Just avoid those kind of things. If you eat a whole fruit, that has sugar in it, right? But it also has the fiber in it that's going to help both your intestines to grow good bacteria, and it's going to have energy for your whole system, your heart, right? And it will lower inflammation by the bacteria in your intestines will make what do they call it? Short chain fatty acids, SCFA, which lowers inflammation. And so everything will work better and your energy system will work and your heart is dependent on this. So what you eat is important. Avoid anything that's processed, just eat whole foods. And you can avoid that. And then you don't have to worry about all these crazy schemes for eat this, don't eat that, only eat this with that. Take our special smoothie that's gonna make you well. It's not.
Well, and this kind of leads us into number 3 on our list of 4 ways to love your heart, which is lower your insulin.
Okay, so what you eat is really important. So why lower insulin? Okay, this is something you guys didn't know. Your heart needs 60% of its energy needs to come from fat. Yes, fat. So everybody thinks of sugar as the energy molecule, right? And then fat is a side thing that you burn if you don't have any sugar. Well, yeah, that's true. So every time you eat sugar, you make insulin, and insulin tells your body don't use fat for energy. So now you can't use fat for energy. What happens to your heart? Your heart has less energy. There's actually just less energy because the heart needs fat and you can't burn fat. So now you have the sugar, so you can burn sugar, but you're not going to have as much energy in your heart. What's the effect of that? Insulin resistance causes all of these things that you've heard about, like atrial fibrillation, arrhythmias of other kinds, congestive heart failure or heart failure for whatever other reasons. So enlargement of the heart, high blood pressure, all of these issues come from insulin resistance. So how do you get your insulin resistance down? Well, number 1, don't eat sugar. Number 2, fasting. Fasting is a great way to get your insulin resistance down. So, and that improves your insulin sensitivity. So you make less insulin so that your heart has plenty of fat to burn and you have plenty of energy. So fasting and avoid sugar.
All right. Number 4, stay active.
Okay, so activity, we often don't harp on activity. We don't put a lot of emphasis on it. But you know what? Going back to insulin, if you're active, when you start using your muscles to a certain degree, you can pull glucose into your muscles without insulin. You don't need insulin to get glucose into your muscles while you're exercising. So why is that important? Because then exercise can act as if it were insulin and you don't need to make extra insulin. So you make less insulin. So exercise is a way of lowering your insulin. So that's a part of answering the question of number 3. Exercise is so wonderful. You know what? People build up glycogen, which is a starch that stores sugar inside the cells. And as the cell fills up with glycogen, it shuts off the insulin receptors and makes you insulin resistant. So there's 2 things that have to happen. Number 1, you got to stop eating sugar because your cells are full already. It's like, you're filling up your car with gas and the gas pump keeps stopping because it's full. And so you pull it out a little bit and squeeze a little more and the gas is spilling out onto the floor because your auto stop mechanism isn't working. or it is working, but you're overriding it. So the insulin is to get sugar into the cells, and when they're full, you don't need sugar in the cells, but you need to use up that sugar. How do you use up that sugar? Exercise.
Yeah.
So if you're exercising, then you're starting to use up the sugar. So then your cells are going to go, oh, we need sugar. They're going to make more insulin receptors. Then the insulin can come in, and then the sugar could come in the cells. Your blood sugar goes down, your insulin goes down, and everybody's happy, and we have world peace.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great to me.
So now you know
it.
how to now you know how to create world peace.
You just love your heart
Just love
and
your heart.
others. All right. Very good. Love it. Let's dig into some of these questions. Let me see. If you could post those in the Q&A, that would be wonderful. Beverly had said, every medicine balances benefits and risks. No?
Yes. Yes. And so you have to understand what the risks are and the benefits. And the point I was making at the beginning was that that the doctors are not aware of the risks. So Joe was asking, how do doctors balance that, with and the way we're always taught is you don't mention the risks. You don't talk about that.
Beverly had also mentioned, I said dark chocolate, the ways to love your heart weren't necessarily dark chocolate and flowers, but Beverly does bring up an interesting point. What about chocolate as an antioxidant? Dark chocolate. I mean, maybe.
Maybe.
If it's
As
real,
long as it doesn't
like,
have sugar in it.
Yeah, it depends on what percentage.
Or artificial sweeteners.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's interesting. We were in southern Mexico where chocolate came from, where they first made chocolate. And there's a museum there, the Chocolate Museum, Coco Museum, Cacao Museum. And it was really interesting to see how it was first made and how it was used. And you know what? They didn't have sugar to put in it when they were using it, when the indigent peoples of southern Mexico were using it. And they made chocolate drinks, and it was like, coffee. It's kind of bitter, but it was good.
Yeah. All right. Parvin says, I've been taking Cinechroma in the morning. What time do you recommend to take Nervala and berberine? I take other meds AM and metformin PM.
Okay, so berberine, take it twice a day. And Nervala you can take any time with meals. So it's better absorbed with some fat, so take it with a meal. And it doesn't really matter. Generally, morning time is a better time to take supplements because your liver's turned on in the morning, and you can process them and get them where they need to be a lot better. Whereas if you take them in the evening, you tend to store them in the fat, and they're not as useful.
Beverly had said, how about ashwagandha in that Indian study?
Oh, I think that was one of the supplements. I'm not sure, but yeah, ashwagandha has been shown to lower cortisol levels and improve insulin sensitivity, but not that much. It doesn't have that much effect on insulin sensitivity. So I don't know. I don't recall.
We have ashwagandha in our Healthy Heart. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So keep that in mind. BartonNutrition.com. You can check all of our supplements out. They are really good supplements. Use code webinar25 to save 25%. Webinar25 is one word. Okay. All right. Next question. Rosalind said, hello, Dr. Saunders. Can you take too much olive oil? I use olive oil butter. My cholesterol is 290. Triglyceride is 132 and HDL 54. LDL 210. So they wanted to put me on 40 milligrams of rosuvastatin. Rosuvastatin, it says. Okay. When I tell them I am taking something natural, they have a problem with it. Now I've gotten it down before naturally. Now it's a problem. First, it was 20 milligrams a day. When I complain about my legs hurting, I was told to take it every other day. Now I have a doctor who told me to take 40 milligrams every other day. I don't see a difference in the amount to take. It's still 20 milligrams a day.
Exactly. Very good. Okay. So if the olive oil butter is a hydrogenated olive oil, then it's very bad, because it will definitely increase your risk of heart disease. Whereas if you're just using plain olive oil, that's okay. But consider this, you can get too much olive oil. And by too much means your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio gets too high, because olive oil is about 13 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3, and you want it to be right around 1 to 1. So to balance the olive oil, you have to have some kind of omega-3 oil, and there's really only 3 ways: fish, flax seeds, and chia seeds. Well, there's algae, but yeah, that's still a fish thing, right? So there's no other good way to get more omega-3 than omega-6. It's really just those 3. So on the one hand, yes, olive oil is fine. It actually has a very small amount of omega-3 and omega-6. It's not very much either way. It's mostly omega-9 and saturated fat. But can you get too much was the question. And I think you can, unless you balance it with some omega-3.
All right. I'm also going to mention that we have an omega-3 supplement as well that can be found at bartnutrition.com, and use code webinar25 to save 25%. All right. Okay. Beverly,
Can I say one more thing for Rosalind? I forgot to mention your triglycerides are 132, which is more than double your HDL. And what that means is that you're not using fat efficiently. So you can improve all your numbers by getting off of glucose and getting more insulin sensitive. So we talked a lot about insulin sensitivity. So if you did phase 1 of the program of the Diabetes Solution Kit, in that phase 1, you're going to drop your insulin down and you're going to start using fat for energy. And then that's a much better way than using any medications or drugs.
Couple comments from Beverly. Loneliness is the ground of mental illness.
Indeed.
And Beverly says, eat natural, unprocessed food, and eat less. First of all, Beverly, I think you could probably run this webinar at this point. You are awesome.
Let's do that.
Okay. David said, how does the India study that diet does not account for heart disease reconcile with your statement that you should only eat whole foods? Hey, that's good.
Okay. So death from heart disease.
Why are all the smart people on the webinar today? They're going to challenge. No, I'm just kidding. This is good.
So remember that they were talking about vascular disease, that the blood vessels are getting choked off. I was talking about something else, and that's the energy system of the heart. And that's congestive heart failure and arrhythmias of the heart. So like atrial fibrillation, that kind of thing. So that's where that reconciliation comes in. Thank you, David. I think David lives in Colombia, right?
Yeah, I think so, right? I'm pretty sure that's David.
Yeah.
We love that you're here, David. Thank you for always being here on our webinars as well. Okay, let's see. Sib says, every week I buy fresh pineapple, which I peel and dice for a snack throughout the week. Is this too much sugar? Before Dr. Saunders answers, I'm just going to say, yum, and then I'll let him answer.
Can I add to that? Yum. I love fresh pineapple, and it's really good for you. And it has good enzymes in it. And in fact, when people have intestinal problems like diverticulitis, where they have really bad intestinal problems, I put them on a fresh green smoothie. So anything fresh and green with pineapple, fresh pineapple goes in there too. and that's all they drink. They don't eat anything else. They just have that 3 times a day. And it clears out colon problems. It clears out diverticulitis, and it really improves people that are having like diarrhea or anything like that. So, so what about eating the pineapple every day? Well, if you don't have insulin resistance and you're eating pineapple every day, that's fine. But if you have diabetes or something, it's going to be a problem because the pineapple just has a lot of sugar in it.
Yeah. I might be wrong in this, but is the main ingredient or one of the ingredients in, or maybe it's not ingredient, bromelain, whatever it is in pineapple, is that what people are using for motion sickness as well? Is that the same thing?
For motion sickness, bromelain, I don't know. Bromelain is used for, well, digestion and for colds and flu and stuff like that. I don't know.
I might have made that up, but no, it is no wait, bromelain, right?
Yeah,
That's the same
bromelain.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
That's
is.
it's an enzyme. Yeah.
So in fact, they're even using it with Dramamine. I guess they're even selling it, the two together.
Oh, interesting, because I've always recommended it with quercetin. Quercetin with
Oh,
bromelain is
okay.
really good for allergies.
Interesting. Oh yeah, here's some vertigo stuff that has the bromelain in it as well. So very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious about this as well. Someone said, what is included in the drink with the pineapple?
Oh, anything green. So leafy greens like spinach, kale, chard. And someone even asked me, "Can I put an avocado in there?" I'm like, "Yeah, avocado's green. You can have that." Um, anything that's green, fresh greens. If you want to put broccoli in there, that's okay. It works so well for colitis or any inflammatory condition in the colon. The the bromelain really, I think it is the bromelain, but the fresh pineapple really adds the enzymes to it. It's great.
Okay. Okay, Lori said, do you think broken heart syndrome has a correlation with an elevated calcium score? I'm 63 with family history of CAD. I was married for 25 years and my husband wanted a divorce. This was an extremely difficult time for me, in that I literally cried 3 times a day for 2.5 years. All my other numbers are great except for a score of 879. Weight, blood pressure, lipid profile, ejection fraction, all good numbers. A1C 5.8. Diet is much improved since I joined your team in January. Needless to say, it was stress, and how I coped was to work as much as I can, including overtime. Now I'm forced to slow down and do more taking care of myself by exercising and dieting. I want to fast, but how should I do this? 1 day, 3 day, 30 day? Great question, Lori.
Wow. No, that's a whole series of questions, and
Yeah,
that's a
yes.
lot. That's a lot of things to talk about. Okay, so on the one hand, the answer to your first question is yes, yes. The broken heart syndrome definitely correlates um, with vascular disease. So the blood vessels in the heart are affected. And the coronary calcium score also correlates with the vascular disease. I've never seen a study specifically on broken heart syndrome with the coronary calcium score. And so I don't know that there's a direct connection there, but that's possible, yes. So your numbers are okay, but your blood sugar is relatively high. You're in the pre-diabetes range. That is also a risk factor for insulin resistance, but stress causes insulin resistance too. So it's not just one thing that does it. It's this whole combination, and having the stress makes you more insulin resistant. And then as you're more insulin resistant, you crave carbohydrates more, and so you tend to eat more carbs, and this is kind of a cycle that gets set up pretty easily. So now you're, like you said, taking care of yourself, getting sort of back on track. So can you reverse it? Yes. And that's been proven in multiple studies. You can reverse it by reducing stress.
Okay. Lori had said, can I lower my calcium score?
Um, I have never seen that happen. I had a guy that the one I told you about earlier that was playing tennis, the tennis player. Yeah, he no longer had chest pain, so he totally better. He could play a full tennis match with no chest pain, but his coronary calcium score got worse. So I've never seen a lower coronary calcium score with any treatments.
Okay. David had said same question with exercise. So maybe what the impact of exercise on.
Yeah. So as I go through, exercise doesn't matter, eating doesn't matter, exercise doesn't matter. So why am I saying that it's good for your heart to exercise? Well, again, that's an energy thing. As it's not going to exercise will not improve the blood flow through your coronary arteries. Correct, and that's the way we're looking at coronary artery disease. But it does improve the function of your heart. It does increase the contractility, the amount of blood that your heart pumps out each time, and it improves the energy production, the energy systems in your heart, making more mitochondria. So yes, you do love your heart by exercise, but no, it won't clear out your arteries. Thank you.
Lily said, Dr. Saunders, can you please explain type 1 diabetes? Can there be adult onset?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've seen several cases. Okay, so I explained type 2 diabetes. Remember, the cell is filled up to the brim with sugar. And then they block the insulin receptors going, no, we can't take in any more sugar. So the insulin doesn't work. Okay, that's type 2. Type 1 is exactly the opposite. There's no sugar in the cells, and there's no insulin to let the sugar into the cells. So the sugar is swimming, tons of sugar swimming around inside. The cell is dying of starvation in a sea of sugar because it can't get into the cell because there's no insulin. So type 1 is a lack of insulin. Your pancreas just doesn't make insulin. And if you don't have insulin, sugar can't get into the cells. No sugar in the cells starve. And they literally starve to death. So it's not a small thing. It's really important. People with type 1 diabetes, they can eat all they want. They could scarf down all the food they want. They won't gain any weight, and they will starve to death while they're eating. It's just the way the system works that you don't get the energy into the cells. The sugar, the glucose won't go into the cells without insulin. So insulin is very important. And if you don't make insulin, then you need it. So that's where injections come in, and those people need insulin injections. Now, can it happen later in life? Absolutely, anytime. You can get autoimmune pancreas problems. It's the islet cell, which makes the insulin. You can have an autoimmune problem where your own immune system is attacking the islet cells and blocking it and preventing the insulin from working. So you stop making insulin because your islet cells are being attacked by your own immune system, and that can happen any time of life. So yeah, type 1, that's why we have to test the 4 things. Remember, we always test C-peptide, which is the pancreas produced insulin, and then insulin level, and then glucose and hemoglobin A1C. Because we want to know the insulin and the C-peptide to know if the pancreas is working. Is this type 1 or type 2? Most doctors don't even test.
Okay. Let's see here. Lisa says, what is the best way to lower blood pressure without medication?
The best way to lower blood pressure is to find out why the blood pressure is elevated. So let's look at some possibilities of what causes the blood pressure to be elevated. If the brain is not getting enough oxygen, then the blood pressure will go up. Why? Because the brain only has one way of increasing blood flow. That's by raising the blood pressure. So the brain is saying, I want more blood flow, so I'm going to raise the blood pressure. Why do I need more blood flow? Because I don't have enough energy. So I'm going to raise the blood flow. So if there's not enough oxygen, so somebody that has a stroke is going to get a very high blood pressure because their brain is screaming out for more blood flow because there's not enough oxygen in that area that's plugged up, causing the stroke. But there's something else that we often don't talk about, and that's sugar, glucose. You actually decrease the amount of glucose that's available when you have insulin resistance, and your brain requires glucose. Your brain can't use fat for energy. It has to have sugar. And if you can't get that sugar in because you have insulin resistance, then the brain screams out for more blood flow. That's the only way it has of increasing the glucose in there. It says, oh, I must be lacking in blood flow. So it raises the blood pressure. So people with insulin resistance, they all get high blood pressure. Why? Well, because the brain is saying, I need more flow. Okay, so that's one way of looking at high blood pressure. What about kidneys? If your kidneys aren't getting enough blood flow, then they say, I need more blood flow, and they raise the blood pressure. So one kidney that isn't getting enough blood flow because of, let's say, a constriction of the artery to the kidney, will put out a whole bunch of what's called renin to raise the blood pressure, and then the blood pressure will go up. Wow. And then you will have high blood pressure because of a kidney problem. So look at that, the difference. We have a kidney problem, a brain problem, and these are bad problems. But if you're dealing with the brain and your problem is the kidney, it's not going to help. If you're dealing with the kidney and the problem is the brain, that's not going to help. You have to deal with the exact reason why your blood pressure is elevated, and then you'll have normal blood pressure.
Yes. Okay. Anonymous said, would taking digestive enzymes exacerbate insulin resistance if taken with a mixture of protein and carbs for a person who has type 2 diabetes?
Well, no, the enzymes aren't going to be the issue. The issue might be if you're going to eat carbs. That could be an issue. Protein too. Some people, not everybody, but some people actually make a lot of insulin when they eat protein. So that's and if you're taking digestive enzymes, it's going to break down those proteins, and some of those amino acids will cause the release of insulin too. So and no, the digestive enzymes aren't the problem. It's the food you're eating.
Don says, what criteria do I use to determine if I need coenzyme Q10 supplements?
Well, I test people, and I got to tell you, I rarely see anybody who needs CoQ10 supplements. But I always put people, if they've been taking a statin drug, I always put them on CoQ10, at least for a little while. And a little while, maybe 90 days or a year or something like that, depending on how long they were on it or whatever. CoQ10, I don't find a lot of deficiency in it, so I don't put a lot of people on CoQ10. However, having said that, you asked the criteria for how would you determine if you needed it. If you have a lack of energy in the heart, so let's say you had like an arrhythmia, like atrial fibrillation, or you were getting frequent PVCs, premature ventricular contractions, or your heart is irregular for whatever other reason, or you had something like congestive heart failure. In those kind of conditions, I put people on CoQ10 for that too. And the answer for why is I don't know if they need it or not, but it is a common problem that may help. So I added in.
Okay. Next question here from Anonymous. Is it possible to reverse saggy skin? Maybe a result of one or all of these things: lack of exercise, lack of collagen, and fasting for 16 hours a day, in addition to a very low fat diet. You know what's so funny is right before I hopped on this webinar, I got a quick glance. I was sharing this somewhere, YouTube, I think. Saw a video of the guy that does the bulletproof coffee. I cannot think of his name. Anyway, he's doing some things. He's had some weight. He's lost like 100 pounds, I think. And so he's doing a lot of different treatments for his skin as well right now. So it's funny that you're asking this. Dr. Saunders, what do you think?
Huh. Well, uh, people are different in the amount of collagen and elastin they have in their skin. Skin will generally shrink down to fit the body, but it doesn't always. Sometimes it remains saggy for a long time. And so the question is, could you put anything on the skin that will stop that from happening? Not really. Does collagen help? It might. Taking collagen peptides, for example, enzymes, for example, might be helpful. There isn't a good way to take elastin. Methylsulfonylmethane, MSM, can be helpful in this regard. But the fact is, I don't know. Maybe we should do a webinar on that or something.
Here, let me share this. Prepare yourself for when I scroll up. First of all, it's Dave Asprey, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, Dave.
Okay, here we go. You can read this. You can hop on his own Facebook page, but he's definitely doing some stuff here. So I think he's honestly having things removed.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, if you want to go read about that, you can. I don't know that it follows exactly what we're talking about here, but I just happened to see it. So there you go. All right. Let's do another question. Oh, Sib said they use ginger for motion sickness. Yes. I've seen that they're using that with Dramamine as well, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. Don't need that one. Did that. Bromelain helps with pain. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it does. It's you can get a series of enzymes that actually are for pain control.
Okay, Jamie says, is it good to take apple cider vinegar? I put it in water.
Actually, yeah, it has a lot of effects. It's a SCFA, short chain fatty acid. It's made by bacteria and yeast, which is why it's in the vinegar in the first place, or why, yeah, how the vinegar became vinegar was this acetic acid. And it has a lot of beneficial effects on the body, including shutting down the acid and decreasing inflammation. So yeah, I think I often recommend people who have acid reflux to just take a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, put it in water, like a half a cup of water, and drink it down. I think it was Joe that told me about that first, like 20 years ago. And you know what? It works.
All right. Okay, Anonymous says, I'm sensitive to lemons and other citrus fruits. They give me gastritis-like feeling. Can I reverse this?
Probably not. You probably have a sensitivity to something in the citrus fruits, and some people just have issues with them, and if it's gastritis-like feeling, like irritation of the stomach or nausea or anything like that, I don't know of how you would reverse that. I always tell people if they're sensitive to something to avoid it.
Beverly says, cover the sugar with protein, and the amount of pineapple is the factor you must control. That's true. Ooh, good question here from Sib. Is diabetes hereditary?
Good question. Okay, so type 2 diabetes is somewhat hereditary. I actually have the gene that's the most potent gene for diabetes, for type 2 diabetes, because it prevents me from using sugar well. So I've struggled with this for a long time, which is one reason why I have this webinar, right? I researched and researched and looked, and how do I do this and how do I do that? And it's related to other things too, like type 3 diabetes, which is Alzheimer's disease, which my grandfather had and died of. So, so that's why I've been doing the research. And pretty much there is a hereditary component, but your epigenetics, or the things that you do that change how your genes are manifest. So I don't have to manifest that gene because I don't eat sugar, and I do eat fruit and stuff like that. I just don't eat any processed sugar, and I fast periodically.
Let's see. Anonymous said more and more olive oil is coming in dark green plastic bottles. Does this affect the quality of the oil? Couple other questions about that, but what do you think about that?
The dark green plastic bottles. I think part of the reason for that is the sunlight or light can affect the oil. So so that might be part of it. But I don't know if it affects the quality of the oil. I don't think it does.
Maybe go back and listen to our plastic discussion that we had a couple weeks ago, because that was really good. We talked about some myths. What's it called when you have a fear of plastics?
Oh, the plastophobia.
Is that what it was? Okay. So check out that webinar. You might be surprised to what you learn in that one. That was just a couple of weeks ago, probably. So, okay. And another question about that, Joe, is can the first pressed olive oil be used for cooking?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's probably the best.
And how does one know what brands are safe to buy?
Okay, good question. I don't know. Look up in Consumer Reports. They did a report on olive oil, and it was very interesting. There were only 2 or 3 that were actually 100% olive oil. That most of them were deodorized, which means they mix it with like canola oil, and sometimes it's more canola oil than olive oil. And there were only a few of them that were actually 100% olive oil. And one of them surprised me, which is why I remember it, because that's what I buy. It's the Kirkland brand, that in the dark green plastic bottle. I don't know. And but it was one of the few that was 100% olive oil.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's it for us today. Thank you, Dr. Saunders, so much.
You're
We'll see
welcome.
you tomorrow
Afternoon.
and maybe next week. Some of you will come back next week, but you can join us for the Home Cures That Work webinar that will be held tomorrow, Thursday at 12 noon Central Time.